There are many ways in which COVID affects the brain. One of the most obvious is that during this time of lockdown, there's been a lot of stress and anxiety, and that causes the body to be flooded with stress hormones. A lot of people have had difficulty sleeping. There's been more depression. There's been an uptick in suicide rates.
Some people's anxiety is increased because of loneliness and isolation. Bereavement, that's been a big one. And bereavement, I don't just mean loss of loved ones, loss of jobs. You know, a loss of so many different things. People have lost finances. Some people have lost their homes. And loss of routine, that's not helped.
The first thing that comes to anybody's mind when you hear about autism is that, one, those people are pretty rigid and routine oriented, and two, they need structure in their life. And you can imagine with this lockdown and coronavirus itself, there's so much uncertainty. There are no answers. Like, for instance, my 13-year-old gets very upset when she's unable to do some stuff we used to do before lockdown. And then she starts getting in the rut of asking questions about the vaccination, for instance, or treatment. And it really bothers her that I can't give her a timeline, that when it's going to be over and when everything is going to go back to normal. And then she's also doing virtual schooling, so no structure there. So, I mean, I think we all are struggling as a family, because when she's having difficulty and her tantrums are up, it just upsets the whole routine. I struggled myself initially a lot so I would take on everybody's anxiety, and then at the end of the day, I would be exhausted mentally and physically. So I am under the care of a psychiatric nurse practitioner as well. And I would literally feel like I can't breathe because there's so much on my plate and on my mind.
Things like anxiety, depression, addictions, all of these things have worsened because there's more mental noise, there's more agitation, whichever shape or form it's taking. I've got some patients who their anxiety has gotten better throughout the lockdown period because they've found more time to focus on their mental health rather than being caught up in the busyness of rushing around everywhere. On the other hand, there's some people who've had anxiety in the past or have never had anxiety, who have either developed anxiety during COVID or their anxiety has worsened.
So there was always a panic attack around about 11 o'clock at night, 10:30, 11. And if I was out anywhere, I used to stay out for as long as I could so that I wouldn't experience a panic attack. And at the start of COVID, the first lockdown in March, I completely panicked, living on my own, and went to stay with my brother and sister-in-law. We had a chat. They could see that I hadn't been so well. I was very quiet during the first couple of months, quite reserved, not finding things very interesting. But by the time, after 3 months, the summer came, I just felt a different person. I felt as though I had recovered. Mentally, I didn't have any anxiety. I suppose during lockdown, it wasn't enough for me just to have WebExes or Zoom meetings or video calls. I realised how important it is for me as an individual to be with people and yes, interacting with them.
Being connected online is much better than not being connected online. But there's still, of course, something lacking, and we all feel that because the way we are wired up, we're meant to hug and touch and, shake hands and be in contact with other people. One of the things that's been of interest to me is how it's affected our notion of time. It has proven very difficult for all of us who have been locked down to make good estimates of how long it's been since we did this or that. We're not making those clearly distinguishable location-based memories anymore because our location doesn't change. So that has made everything a little muddier for us in our memories. The most important thing is to keep your brain active and engaged. And so this is really the main challenge of the pandemic is how do you get your brain to seek novelty? There's been a lot of creativity in this time as people seek to figure out how do we seek new ways of doing things. And we've actually seen this from the very first week of the pandemic. Happily, we're a very creative species and we are trying our best to adapt.
For kids, I'm extremely worried. They're not typically developing kids. They are going to have some deficits, definitely, in social part, in academics, and then also in general, like just being stuck in the house.
I think there's a slight fear. The second lockdown period is shorter. I am counting the days until we can go out and see everybody.
You know, one thing I say to all my patients is a mental health crisis or a mental health challenge, any challenge actually, is an opportunity for us to learn something about ourselves and grow through that.